stapled visas, the latest Chinese provocation. Although not a new one, they've done it before. China is issuing stapled visas for Arunachal Pradesh. And their targets this time are Indian athletes. You see, China is hosting the World University Games. A martial arts team from India was going to participate. This is the Indian Wushu team. They have 8 members. 3 of them are from Arunachal Pradesh. All of them applied for Chinese visas, but the 3 athletes from Arunachal got stapled visas. So the entire team has pulled out. They will not go for the tournament. And like I said, China has done this before. It's an old trick of theirs to harass the people of Arunachal Pradesh and to provoke India. But why does China do it? Because it says the entire state of Arunachal Pradesh belongs to them. They call it South Tibet. One problem though, their claim has no basis in fact. The whole world accepts India's sovereignty on Arunachal. But when China wants to reignite this dispute, it resorts to such tactics. The question is, why do it now? More importantly, how should India respond? For starters, India has at least acknowledged that this happened. New Delhi has lodged a protest. They've called the move quote-unquote unacceptable, which is right, but hardly enough. Mere condemnation is not taking us anywhere. The app bans and the trade restrictions have had a limited impact. So what should New Delhi do? Is it time for India to change its approach? On Vantage tonight, we'll discuss this. First, let's bring you more details of the case, starting with what are stapled visas and why they're so controversial. Now, if you have a passport and you've traveled overseas, you know how visas work. They're usually printed on one page of your passport. In some cases, the issuing country uses a sticker. The idea is for the visa to stay on your passport permanently. Now, some countries even stamp them. They stamp the visas. They do this in addition to the printing or the sticker. This is the standard practice. But staple visas do not work that way. They are attached with pins or staples to your passport. They can be torn off or detached. And they're used to make a point. Staple visas are basically a political tool. China started using them in the year 2005. Not every Indian citizen who applied got a visa like this. China gave such visas to Indians from Arunachal Pradesh and in some cases to Indians from Jammu and Kashmir. This happened in 2008 and 2009. But their target mostly has been Arunachal Pradesh. How does it help Beijing? This is their twisted way of sending a message that Arunachal Pradesh is a part of China. So if you're visiting from there, you don't actually need a visa. That's what they're trying to say, and this is problematic on many levels. It's a challenge to India's sovereignty, also a national security issue. Because the staple visas are just one part of the story. China repeatedly undermines India's position on Arunachal. It issues Chinese names for Indian cities and releases controversial maps. So far, 3 such lists have been issued. The first one was in 2017, the second in 2021, and the third in April this year. 3 months later, the staple visas are back, while the situation at the border remains unchanged. This week, we heard from the Chinese again. They talked about what they call the Bali Consensus. We reported about it earlier this week. There was a meeting in Johannesburg. India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval met Wang Yi, who has now returned as China's foreign minister, Wang Yi. Now, Doval told Wang Yi that Chinese provocations have eroded trust. In response, China spoke about a consensus between Modi and Xi. The 2 leaders spoke last year at the G20 summit in Bali. There's a video of them shaking hands. India was asked about this encounter last year. India played it down, saying they were just exchanging courtesies. But now India is offering a completely different version. Listen to this.
With regard to the question relating to the handshake between the Prime Minister and President Xi Jinping, I will only say that Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping, who were both attending the G20 dinner yesterday, hosted by the Indonesian president, exchanged courtesies at the conclusion of the dinner.
During the Bali G20 summit last year, Prime Minister and President Xi Jinping, at the conclusion of the dinner hosted by the Indonesian president, exchanged courtesies and spoke of the need to stabilize our bilateral relations. So that's the statement I'm making. I think Foreign Secretary did mention, maybe he didn't mention the second part of it. He did talk about exchanging courtesies and I think there was a general discussion or spoke of the need for stabilize our bilateral relationship or relations.
Was this discussed in the same exchange of courtesies, or was there a separate meeting between Modi and Xi Jinping in Bali? No side is prepared to divulge more details right now, but whatever be the case, it has made virtually no difference to the relationship. It has not stabilized the relationship. The border standoff has not been resolved. And now China is testing India on another front, Arunachal Pradesh. Clearly, dialogue and diplomacy have not worked. So is it time for India to try a different approach, to consider some retaliatory options? And what will those look like? China is issuing staple visas. So what is stopping India from doing the same? Issue staple visas to the people of Tibet who want to come to India. And this won't be without precedent. It is done in cases where passports and visas are not recognized. One of the most notable examples is that of Israel. Before the normalization wave, multiple Arab nations refused to stamp or recognize Israeli passports. Some countries still do it, like Iran, Kuwait, Lebanon, Libya, Syria, Saudi Arabia, even Pakistan. These countries do not recognize Israeli passports. In some cases, passport holders with an Israeli visa are not even admitted. They're denied entry. So there are ways to respond proportionally. It is only a matter of intent. Otherwise, you can issue one more statement, ban one more app, and remain stuck in this impasse. We have another story from China tonight on how it plans to dominate the high seas. China is acquiring new bases, and these are far beyond Chinese borders. Some new satellite pictures have emerged. They show that Beijing could be getting a new base overseas. And where is it? In Cambodia. Let me show you the pictures. This is the Ream Naval Base. A new pier is coming up here. Experts say it is almost complete now, and several reports say that China is secretly building this facility. The US believes so too. But both China and Cambodia have rubbished these reports. And yet the world is not buying their version. I'll tell you why. Let's go back to that picture. The new pier at the Ream Naval Base is strikingly similar to another facility, China's naval base in Djibouti. We have a satellite image of that base too. Let's put both the pictures side by side. Now look closely. Both the piers are similar, same size, same design, and both piers are long enough to berth warships, even aircraft carriers. China built the base in Djibouti, so it's quite possible that it took the same design to Cambodia and built another pier to serve the PLA there. Last year, China's foreign ministry faced some questions about this. They were asked about the base in Cambodia and if Beijing was upgrading it. China was cagey in its response.
China and Cambodia are comprehensive strategic partners, and the cooperation between the two countries in various fields is open, transparent, reasonable and legitimate. The Chinese-aided project to upgrade the Cambodian naval base is a normal aid activity to Cambodia.
It is normal aid activity, they said, but anything that involves a military base cannot be a normal affair. It is an investment, it's a strategic maneuver, and in China's case, part of a well-thought-out plan. The PLA is chasing supremacy on the high seas. Djibouti was the first step. Cambodia could be the second, but definitely not the last. Beijing won't stop at two bases. They have ambitious plans. They want naval bases across the globe, and they began work on it more than 2 decades ago. In the last 20 years, China has financed some 123 seaport projects, 123 projects. They will be built at 78 ports in at least 46 countries. And how much money has China poured into this? Around $30 billion. Are all of these ports military ports? Well, China does not use that label. It says these are civilian ports, commercial projects that enable trade. That's how they put it. But that doesn't mean they cannot be used for military purposes, because Chinese law enables it. It enables dual use of such facilities, meaning if the Chinese Navy needs a port, it can use it. A warship could easily make a stopover at any port that is owned or operated by a Chinese firm. Even if it is a civilian facility, the Navy has the right to use it. And these ports that China is financing could easily fulfill some key requirements like refueling and replenishment of supplies like food and water. In fact, the Chinese Navy is already making use of these ports. And where are they located? Let's pull up the map for you again. Chinese-funded ports are everywhere, from Latin America to Africa, even near Europe, South Asia, and East Asia. So far, China has committed to building projects at 78 ports. Out of these, 49 projects are either approved, under construction, or already completed. And 8 of these ports are special. I'll tell you why I say this. It's because they are well equipped. They are the best suited for the PLA to have a base in the future. And which bases are these? I have a list again. The Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, the Bata port in Equatorial Guinea, the Gwadar port in Pakistan, Kribi in Cameroon, the Reem base in Cambodia, Luganville in Vanuatu, Nakala in Mozambique, and Nouakchott in Mauritania. Experts say these are the likely candidates. This is a short list for potential Chinese naval bases. Look closely and you'll notice that 2 of them are close to the Indian borders, Gwadar in Pakistan and Hambantota in Sri Lanka. Now the question to why China is building so many bases. Why do they need them? For 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is Taiwan. China wants a navy that is powerful enough to carry out a future invasion. The bases can support a potential operation like this. Reason number 2 is global domination, to challenge powers like the US. China needs facilities to project military power in every potential theater of conflict. Right now, only the US has this capability. Its forces can deploy anywhere in the world within hours. China wants to match that. Hence the plan to build more bases in remote areas. And you can imagine the response of the West. They will try to one-up. So this is now a race, and it can only have one outcome: higher risk of an armed conflict. Some good news for Pakistan. You don't hear that every day. Saudi Arabia is building an oil refinery in the country, specifically in the province of Balochistan. The agreement was signed on Thursday. A total of 5 parties are involved, 4 state-owned Pakistani firms and the Saudi oil giant Aramco. How much money are we talking about? Around $10 billion. The Pakistani firms will contribute 40 to 45% of the initial money. Aramco will give the rest. The plan is to build the refinery here in the town of Gwadar. It's also where China is building a huge port. Now, why is this project important for Pakistan? Well, at this point, any project is important for Pakistan. Their economy is that bad. But beyond that, a couple of reasons. This is the first new refinery to be built in Pakistan in a decade. So 10 years, 0 refineries. In the 3 decades before that, they built 2. Long story short, Pakistan's output is not impressive. Their maximum capacity is around 20 million tons. Their actual output is just 11 million tons. And clearly that's not enough. Pakistan's domestic oil consumption is expected to reach 33 million tons next year. They produce just 1/3 of that. So this new refinery is not an additional boost, it's more of a necessity. But what's in it for Saudi Arabia? Why are they doing this? They were not 100% convinced by Pakistan's pitch, which is why this project was stalled for a long time. They thought it was too risky. So what explains the U-turn? 2 major reasons. 1, Pakistan has diluted the risk. Like I said, their state-owned companies will pump in a lot of money, around 40 to 45% of it. Riyadh will only have to give the rest, which is still a lot, but it's a lesser risk. So their exposure is limited if things go south. Reason number 2, Pakistan sweetened the deal. They have given a 20-year tax holiday for the refinery, no custom duties, no surcharges, no sales taxes. After all that help, Saudi Arabia has agreed to build this. But in Pakistan, signing a deal is never enough. Neither is building the project. Security is the biggest issue in Pakistan, and this project is coming up in Balochistan of all places. It's a restive province in the southwestern part of the country. It's notorious for crackdowns. In May this year, a military installation was attacked by insurgents. At least 13 people were killed, including soldiers. Even foreign projects are not off limits. In fact, China is one of their big targets. Balochistan is a key part of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC. But the locals are pushing back. In 2021, a bus carrying Chinese workers was attacked. 9 of them died. The same year, there was a suicide attack on a luxury hotel in Quetta, the capital of Balochistan. And guess who was staying in that hotel? The Chinese ambassador. Now, if you ask the people of Balochistan, they have the same complaint. The money is coming, but it's not coming to them. And there are no jobs. The work is being done by Chinese workers and engineers. So here's the big question. Could Saudi projects also come under attack in Balochistan? It's certainly a possibility. Even Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif knows this. He was in Gwadar on Thursday. He called for protecting foreign projects in Balochistan. Listen to what he said.
China, Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the UAE are helping us without any condition. So it's our duty to safeguard their projects and investments.
A lot depends on the army, really. You see, Pakistan's civilian government does not run Balochistan. The army does, as they do the rest of the country. So without their blessing, you cannot be safe. In January this year, Army Chief Asim Munir had travelled to Saudi Arabia. I guess the talks went well. The Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, was also supposed to go in April, but his trip was cancelled. It made no difference in the end. The people who mattered had taken the call. And this would never happen anywhere else. The government is stepping down on the 12th of August. That's just 2 weeks away. In most democracies, this is a sitting duck period, but not in Pakistan. Their government just signed a deal for the country's biggest refinery. You can understand the urgency in Islamabad. But why is Riyadh playing along? We keep coming back to that question. They have a long history of supporting Pakistan, you see. The Saudis have bailed out Islamabad many times. Most recently, this month, Saudi Arabia gave assistance worth $2 billion to Pakistan. The reason is quite simple. Pakistan's military is very close to Saudi Arabia. Army Chief Asim Munir visited the country in January, like I said. It was his first foreign trip after taking office. His predecessor did the same. That's Qamar Javed Bajwa. He too visited Saudi Arabia first after taking office. Riyadh gave him a medal before he retired. This relationship is very transactional. The Saudis keep bailing out Pakistan. In return, the army gives them military muscle. Since the 1970s, Pakistan has trained Saudi soldiers and pilots. Plus, Pakistan is the only Muslim country with nuclear weapons, and even today, that counts for something. But don't think this relationship is all rosy. Saudi Arabia has recently become ambivalent. In 2020, they refused to take deferred payments for oil. Riyadh said, pay up now. The same year, they asked Islamabad to repay loans worth $1 billion. Riyadh said, no more delays, you have to pay us now. Even this year, the kingdom was half-hearted. They did give $2 billion, but only after the International Monetary Fund agreed to bail Pakistan out. So the Saudi tap is not perennial. The flow has already lost momentum. If this Gwadar refinery fails, it could slow to a trickle or even shut. So those were made in Ukraine drones. Now let's talk about some made in India weapons like this one, the Pinaka. It's India's multi-barrel rocket launch system. The Pinaka was first thrust into action in 1999. That's during the Kargil War. It helped the Indian Army with its precision strike. So clearly the Pinaka proved its worth. It is one of our most effective and reliable weapons systems. Many even put it at par with the HIMARS. That's America's game-changing rocket launcher system. But why are we suddenly talking about the Pinaka? Because it seems to have ruffled some feathers. Apparently, it's giving Azerbaijan sleepless nights. They have summoned the Indian envoy over it. Let me give you some context here. In 2022, India and Armenia signed a defense deal. It was to procure the Pinaka missile launchers. The contract was worth 2,000 crores. For India, it was a boost for its indigenous defense industry. For Armenia, it increased its military capabilities. So both the countries were happy. But it left Azerbaijan seething. And why is that? Because Armenia and Azerbaijan are locked in a conflict. It's for this region, the Nagorno-Karabakh region. Internationally, it was recognized as part of Azerbaijan, but the residents are mostly Armenians, so it's a classic ethnic conflict. In 1917, Armenia and Azerbaijan fought over the region. In 2020, they waged a war again. And since then, the situation has remained tense. It's because of these tensions that Armenia chose the Pinaka. You see, Azerbaijan uses a lot of drones. They're called the suicide drones. In such a case, a rocket launcher system must shoot quickly and then disappear. The Pinaka has that capability, which makes it very important for Armenia. But for Azerbaijan, it seems like a red line. They've apparently protested over a cargo of Pinaka launchers reaching Armenia. We have some videos. They were put out by a news portal based in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. They show a camouflage truck convoy moving towards Iran's Nurduz border. That's the border it shares with Armenia. Now, this website claims that this was military cargo. It was first delivered to the Iranian port of Bandar Abbas, and then it was being moved to Armenia. And who did this cargo belong to? According to the website, it's from India. They cite quote-unquote independent sources to claim this. Hours after this report, Baku jumped into action. A presidential advisor summoned the Indian ambassador, this man, Sridharan Madhusudanan. He said Azerbaijan was concerned both about these shipments and also the growing India-Armenia military cooperation. He also apparently questioned the timing of these shipments. He said Azerbaijan is working on a peace deal with Armenia, so sending weapons at a time like this is an escalation. Now, all of these statements are based on reports. There have been no official confirmation or statements from Azerbaijan, and India too has not commented, officially at least. But we can see why Baku may be protesting. They've never been close to New Delhi. In fact, they're part of a new emerging axis, the Azerbaijan-Pakistan-Turkey axis. In the year 2017, these three countries signed a trilateral agreement. This was to establish security cooperation. Azerbaijan used Turkish drones to fight the war in Armenia. On the other side, Armenia and India have historical ties, so it's no surprise that they sealed a defense deal. And that too with the Pinaka. It is India's first genuinely indigenous system. Virtually none of its parts have been imported. So this is a significant deal. And it's not the only one with Armenia. They also want drones from India. They want ammunition and mid-range surface-to-air missiles from India. So Baku can complain all it wants to about meddling and escalating tensions. But this is how it works. When there is a conflict, countries ramp up their defenses everywhere in the world. In this case, Armenia turned to India. And India is working on establishing itself as a defense player, so it must seize any opportunity that comes its way. It's day 520 of the Ukraine war. A lot has changed in these months. But if there's one thing that remained constant, it's Western military aid. The West has been pumping Ukraine with weapons, high-tech ones at that. But guess who is doing the job better? It's Ukraine's homemade drones, apparently. They're made on a shoestring budget. They cost around $200 per drone. They're held together by duct tape. I guess when creativity meets war, miracles can happen. These Ukrainian drones are now a force to reckon with. They're apparently hitting Russian forces hard. Our next report tells you all about these made-in-Ukraine drones.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Or is it a homemade drone stuck together by duct tape? That's the million-dollar question Russia is asking. The war in Ukraine has been raging for some time now, and Kyiv has no dearth of weapons. The West is giving them one weapon after the other. Patriot missile systems, Leopard tanks, HIMARS rocket launcher systems. They have it all. But guess what's making a difference in the war? These drones. They are homemade. They are held together by duct tape, and they're taking down Russian vehicles. Drones may sound like high-tech machinery, but you can make a drone airframe with just about anything. Ukraine's DIY drones are similar. They are held by zip ties, tape, all sorts of stuff you can find at home, especially when your country is at war. More importantly, they are single-use. Once they take off, there is no guarantee that they will land safely. But don't be fooled by their shabby appearance. They may be tied with tape, but they are combat veterans. And they're taking down Russian vehicles. The system may sound crude, almost childish, but these DIY drones are very effective. They can fly behind enemy lines, they can destroy valuable targets, and they can also drop bombs. More importantly, they are available at bargain prices. Take one of these drones, for example. The body is a simple plastic frame. It has one video camera, so that's around $14. Then there's a flight controller, a basic one at that. That costs around $44. And finally, an antenna. That costs $20. The total cost would be around $200. $200 to take down your enemy. But even if they're cheap, they are quite effective. If you attach grenades to it, it becomes a guided anti-tank weapon. It can find targets and hit them with a high accuracy. Basically, unsuspecting soldiers could get the shock of their lives. The Ukraine war has gone on for over 500 days. Kyiv is flush with weapons. It is pressing on with its counteroffensive. But Western armory is struggling against Russian defenses. There is little evidence to show that the weapons of the West have helped Ukraine in any drastic measure. So, will these homemade drones now do the job? Both Russia and Ukraine already use drones. They are a crucial part of the war. But Ukraine's DIY project may turn into a win for Kyiv. They could be crucial for the counteroffensive and tip the scales in their favor.
Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story, starting with Niger, a country in West Africa where supporters of a coup set fire to the headquarters of the ruling party. A runaway bull wreaked havoc in the streets of Peru. 5 people were injured. The video of a giant Hummer is going viral. It is 3 times bigger than a regular SUV. This car has been dubbed Humzilla, and reportedly it belongs to the royal family of the UAE. And finally, taking you back in history to the year 1914, on July 28, the First World War began after Austria-Hungary declared a war on Serbia. Following this, more than 30 nations declared war between 1914 and 1918. It led to unprecedented destruction and loss of human life. We may be leaving you on a grim note, but we hope your weekend is happier. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on Monday.
The enemy was undoubtedly attacking on the... The enemy was undoubtedly...
anda viejo, 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 mete mano, viejo.